Hi, I'm Chitra.
I'm Madhvi.
I'm Jyoti.
I'm Padmaja.
Together, we are your hosts
On the Edge podcast.
We bring you stories and experiences.
From our experiments around learning, marketing, and design.
These are stories of people, technology,
And people interacting through technology.
Of what we see, create,
And recommend.
This is a conversation between Chitra and Rohan Krishna, an EdTech entrepreneur exploring various aspects of product development and marketing. Rohan's dynamic career throws light on what an ideal product manager should do. Listen on to some of his insights on what it takes to build products in the learning space and why he wants to make learning more accessible, effective, and personalized for everyone.
Good morning, Rohan. A very warm welcome to you to the Edge podcast. It's a pleasure having you on our show.
Good morning, Chitra. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Rohan, we ask our guests to introduce themselves to our listeners. How would you like to do that?
Perfect. So my name is Rohan Krishna. I am a co-founder and CEO of EdSanta Education. We are an EdTech company, 5.5-year-old startup, I would say, completely focusing on building tech solutions and tech product for people who want to learn, skill, and upskill. Prior to that, I have been working as into marketing, branding, and building different products globally as assistant vice president in VMedo Inc., a US-based company. And of course, before that, I was into retail sector in Europe for almost 5.5 years. Overall, I carry somewhere around 12 plus years of experience, mainly into building brands, product, and growing businesses from 0 to 1.
Wonderful, Rohan. A lot of questions in that space. How did you actually get into media, branding, marketing, and then building products? How did that all come to be?
Okay, so that's a very interesting journey, and it was by when people say it was an accidental discovery, it was exactly an accidental bump which I had. So I did my master's in business administration and business strategy from University of Aberdeen, Scotland, and immediately after completing my program, I was into CJ Langs and Sons, which is into retail sector, and one of their brands are Spar, or now it's been called Ocean. So for almost like 4.5, 5 years, I was into finding new product that can be introduced into the market, help out, find out the problems which customers are facing, and see if there is a solution that can bridge that gap. But there is always excitement that why am I the only one who is finding this for some gap? Why I'm not building something? Because there you go higher on the value chain. And in all this thing, in 2012, I decided to shift back to India, and I was at my friend's sister's wedding, and there is where I kind of met the CEO of a company, Adeptic Services Private Limited, and I just joined him. It was like he said, okay, why don't you join from tomorrow? And there was my first step of seeing the actual world of marketing, brand building, product building, customer building, and the amount of learning which I have got from there, being in the front line, was really exciting. And that's my beginning journey, I would say. In that domain, when I was in, and that was also the first EdTech company in India to raise funds from Sequoia. That was $7.5 billion. And that's where, you get to see how to build product, how to see the different challenges coming in a different location. For example, one of the very known brand which we have worked on was PM study or Scrum study. Every geography has different, customer base. Tackling those and figuring it out how to get through is really exciting. And there's where my stint of marketing, sales, product development, just came in, and it never left me then.
That sounds like an extremely interesting and exciting start to perhaps what I would like to call a very dynamic career in your case, Rohan, if I may. You mentioned pretty much all the functions. You almost sound like an ideal product manager. It seems like all of these roles that you have performed have given you something. So which of these comes first, in your opinion? Is it marketing and branding for a product? Is it finding customers? Or how do all of these things connect with each other?
Right. Of course, before even going there, I would say, there are 3 to 4 4 steps which we have to take as a mandatory course of action before taking those decisions. The first one is to actually figure out that whatever idea which you are having, either whether it's a product, it's a service, whatever it is it having enough market size, right? And I've seen a lot of products failing, a lot of services failing because you want to launch something and later you realize that there is not enough market there. And I'll give you some example about this later as well. So that's the first start. Second is that, once you have figured out, okay, there is a market, there is an audience, there is a need and demand for this product or solution, then comes the understanding of the user persona. Because unless and until you understand the user persona, you will never be able to reach them out with your product. So the example was that we built one of the products which was targeted, keeping in the mind the US, UK, Canada market. And it was into some IT certifications. We designed the website, we designed everything, we designed our marketing campaign, how will we outreach people and get conversions of customers growing, and it worked very well. Then we decided to expand it into the European market. And to start with, we wanted to expand in Germany and Netherlands. And the same marketing technique, we applied there for 3 months and 6 months. We failed, and we failed miserably. So we kind of dig down to find out why it happened, and what we figured out that the entire user persona and, it's completely different. So for example, LinkedIn is very popular in the US, but now LinkedIn is popular globally. But that time there was a platform called Zing. So that was the most preferred platform in Netherlands. Language was another issue. So we had to go and take a language courses to understand A levels or B levels so that we can articulate things better. So first is to understand your product or your segment where you are planning to take your product out. Second thing is that you have to drive your marketing strategies according to it, right? Third is that if that same marketing technique is not going to work for you across the globe, right? So you keep your ABCs right. The first thing was which market you plan to go at first, second, third, and accordingly your marketing plans and strategies should be shifted and planned out.
Makes a lot of sense, Rohan. So since you have been in the space of learning, and I'm assuming this is learning for people in corporates, what have been some of the insights you have had in terms of gaining an understanding of the user persona? How does one go about that in the learning space? Because there are so many stakeholders here. There are influencers, there are decision makers, and there are the actual consumers of learning. What are some of the tips that you can share while trying to discover user personas for learning products?
That's a very good question and a very complex one to explain, right? What I try to bring forward, Chitra, that this entire user persona and the learning ecosystem has been made very complex, even though it's very simple to understand. Let's understand the stakeholders, right? If I talk as a perspective of a learning product or a learning solution, right? And if I want to see the entire market, of course, you and your end users are going to be the learners, right? Whether it's enterprise, whether it's just a B2C kind of a market segment, the end users are learners. Now, the reach to this end users of the learner varies based on the business model you kind of adopt, right? Whether you're going through an enterprise route, whether you're going a direct route to the customer. If you are going through an enterprise route, there are many stakeholders who come in. As you mentioned, right? Decision makers. Before decision makers, there are other 3 to 4 levels. Your L&D comes in. Before that, your functional head comes in. So a lot of people have their foot in before a learning solution or a product or something is made available for the end users.
Yeah,
right?
I think I should have clarified saying that I meant the enterprise.
Correct. So so that's the structure. And again, this is completely my observation and my finding is that if you really want to reach the end user in an enterprise, you have lot of I won't say hurdles, but a lot of litmus tests you have to pass, and then you will be able to reach out your end users. If you talk about the mindset, again, there is a difference of mindset in India, outside India. Globally, everyone wants a team to learn, skill, upskill. There are different ways and standards of putting things together. If you talk about bigger enterprises and corporates, they have very well structured systems in place. Just not the product I'm talking about in terms of the hierarchy, the mechanism, the processes. It's very well structured. So for any company or any product or any new solution provider, if they want to enter that, they would first need to understand that entire process and gel through. So that is one thing. But when you start going down to the other kind of market size, for example, if you go to small size or mid size, there you have certain room of inculcation of your product with their organization kind of fit for the users. On a personal front, what I feel is when you talk about user personas and learning. So Chitra, tell me, don't you think that we all learn something or the other every day?
Yes, we certainly do.
So why is it, that it has been put a structure to learning and upskilling only limited to a course, right? So when I speak to a lot of L&D professionals, HR professionals, so even founders, CEOs, and when we come into this discussion that, hey, I want our team to upskill. I want them to learn. I want them to go to different courses. And, that's where my point comes in, that why do you think that this learning is only happening through courses, right? Because, on our daily life, when you actually talk to end users, right? We did a lot of market research, right? And I mean by market research means we have spoken to individuals across different role profiles. So we've spoken to people who are actually coding. We are speaking to people who are actually executing the digital marketing strategies, running campaigns, doing SEOs. We have spoken to salespeople, and across functions. We have even spoken to HRs. We have spoken to accounts team. And what we realize is that their learning on a daily basis is enormous. They are stuck into situations where no one is coming and helping them out. Mostly they're trying to find the solution themselves. And it can be either through reading somewhere, finding a blog, going to YouTube, whatever may it be. But the sad part is that learning is never encountered, or it's never kind of monitored on an individual basis. So I think that's the gap area which we see, and we are also working day to day at that. How can we quantify that learning which is happening on a day-to-day basis and show it to the leadership that, of course, your courses are there to help an individual to learn and skill, but at the same time, the individual initiative to solve day-to-day problem is done through some new learning. So that's where we come to. So I never say that, okay, when was last time you have taken any course to an individual, or I don't expect any user or any individual to specifically stop or, find extra 2 hours of the daily routine, go and sign up for a course, do it. Of course you do it, it adds a lot of value to it, but also it's equally important to quantify and keep a measure of what new things you learned today. And it is definitely related to some of the skill which you're working on.
That's a very interesting way that you put it in, Rohan. And I certainly have taken away something from that. And I absolutely like the fact that, you open by saying you don't ask somebody when they last took a course. And personally, for me, that used to be very intimidating. It's almost like if you didn't take a course, you haven't learned anything, which is quite contrary. Because, like you said, we're constantly learning either by doing, by interacting with different kinds of people, trying to collectively solve a business problem at hand. There are so many ways, like you said, right? Learning happens and is happening all the time. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that enterprises are always, in some sense, I feel, a little worried about what happens if my workforce or the people in this organization aren't formally learning something, isn't it? I mean,
you're true. You're right. Right. So where is this heading up to? Now, of course, organizations or enterprises are worried about some formal or structured form of learning, right? Which actually is very much required. But at the same time, just online courses are not the solution, because if those would have been the solution to this problem, the completion rates would have not been somewhere around 4-5%. On the other side, everyone in an organization are not put into programs which cost $400-500. So how do we bridge this gap? This has to be done. And the problem is that no one is addressing this elephant in the room. So building LMSs, I've, Chitra, honestly spoken to so many companies, and I've seen state-of-art LMSs, right? Beautiful. You can expect our feature and it is there. But the user engagement on those platforms are less than 7%. So that is definitely not a good ROI. On the second hand is, if we are expecting, or if the leadership or a new organization is looking for a structured form of learning, and if you find something, definitely a program which is a structured form of learning, that is not going to gel with all the user personas in an organization. So for example, we spoke to one of our enterprise enterprise who has 40 people in the digital marketing team, right? And we figured out the top 2 courses for them and we gave them. Except 2 to 3 people, the remaining people were disconnected. And when we talked to them, they were not finding it comfortable. They were not able to get into it, right? So one size does not fit all. How can we find a solution to this problem? That okay, if there is a structured form of learning, find content related to those structured form of learning in forms or ways you can learn, you can access. Coming out of India, we spoke about, we worked with a very large enterprise in South Africa. In that South African company, majority of employees struggle with English language, and they have been taking courses for their employees, but it's not helping them out. So there is where we always bring in, and and this is what Chitra, we have been working for the last 3.5-4 years, is when you talk about personalized contextual bite-sized learning, you should mean it. And what does personalized contextual learning mean is not just that if I'm working on a problem, I just find content in that content addressing that problem, but it should also be in my comfort zone in terms of my language understanding, my accent understanding, lot of things. It should be a very authenticated video. It should actually address the problem. So those things are required. Second, when you talk about day-to-day learning, day-to-day solving of problems. Now, if there is no structured form of learning in place, how are people at the front line delivering the projects and solving the problem? So you have to even address that. It's that we are not providing them, if you're not able to provide them with a very structured form of learning or a program, till the employees or people in the front line, they are able to self-discover those things, right? So there's a very interesting feature which we have in our product, which actually addresses this, right? So let's say, you are working on certain project, right? And that certain project and I'm talking here now in terms of technical, includes some of AWS stuff. It includes some of the React, CSS, some of things from HTML, and when you are working on project, if you are stuck, right, you are looking for content. Now, what the algorithm would say is that since you have been working on these different technologies or skills and these problems, you have accessed these content which are actually categorized to this part of your structured form of learning. Does it make sense, or is it complex, Chitra?
Yes, it is. It is certainly beginning to make some sense, Rohan.
So let's say you have a very structured form of learning. Organization builds a structured form of learning, right? That okay, if you are working in this role on this skill, you should be knowing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, right? Now, rather than you finding A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, okay, you definitely have those, you have figured out those, you give it to team members, but even let individuals also discover those things for themselves, right? It's not necessary that the video or an article which you give, I will be able to understand, rather than I can find something which is more interactive to me. But yes, there should be a measure, right? That if an individual is looking on content, is it not, or is it relating to the structured form of learning? That is critical. That monitoring and that calibration of time spent of an individual on any piece of content should match with the structured form of learning for an individual. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to extend what you said a little further, Rohan. You talked about the organization having a certain understanding and expectation from individuals in terms of what's expected that they learn in order to be able to deliver value or perform well within the organization. And then you said that it's also incumbent, or we should allow space for the individual themselves to discover what that kind of structured learning is. So where do the two meet? Okay, because at the end of the day, I think there's mutual benefit, right? The organization is going to benefit, and which is why they are investing in learning. And individuals also learn for various reasons. Predominantly, there needs to be their own sense of purpose behind this learning. And the learning has to connect deeply with the work that they are doing in terms of enabling them to do their work better, faster, and in the process, amplify the learning that they have. Where do you think that, have you envisioned or seen how the two will meet actually?
Yeah, so that's a very good kind of point to be addressed, right? And we often come across, when we speak to organizations, we come across the T-learning, the vertical e-learning, the horizontal learning, and all the stuff, which is good from their organizational perspective. But here is a classic finding as well. The organizations who complained or who said that the user engagement on their platforms or for the products which they provide to their employees is less than 7%, the same bunch of people are looking extensively for content outside that element, right? They're kind of signing up into different programs, looking content for different skills. So where is this breakage happening between the user and the organization has to be addressed. So it's just not about finding the right product, right course, right tool, but we have to also understand from the end user's perspective is that what are their ambitions and what are their growth plans. Very often we have seen individuals who are working on projects for 4 years, they have been just stepped into those skills and they have been, what do you expect for a person working for 4 years in that certain set of skills to do?
True.
They will look for content outside. They will look for programs outside. No matter data science and artificial intelligence program have been very, very popular in India, right? How many people have actually transitioned to that role? Those data is not very clearly accessible. So there are multiple things is that, first thing is that organization need to carve out a very specific, just not the structured learning or a learning program, but they need to carve out a very structured form of the career growth plan for an individual in the organization. And of course, it cannot be a 20-year plan. People need to see what new things they can keep on learning to move into different roles, and they will move on. Who doesn't want, to grow up in life, right? It's just that the system has been designed in such a way that, we just take an individual for granted that he or she is just meant to work only on those 5 skills and nothing else. So they also have what we call is content fatigue. Content fatigue, to simply define, is that if I am working for example, if I'm a WordPress developer, and if I know everything about WordPress, for how many times would I keep on going to a course on WordPress? So those things have to be addressed on a very higher level, especially in the big organizations, or enterprises. In small to medium-sized enterprises, there are issues, but not to that extent as you see in large enterprises. Because in these smaller organizations or mid-sized organizations, you, by choice or not, you get to work on different projects, different technologies where you learn, and those things are bridged up.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Rohan. And I think that's going to be the challenge at hand for people in the space of EdTech, designing learning solutions. It's going to be also trying to find just enough and just in time learning solutions. Because I also feel that, like you said, it's not only content fatigue, but overall fatigue, which is sitting in, and also a lot of cognitive overload that's coming in by just the sheer volume and diversity in the amount of information that one needs to be consuming today.
Exactly.
Just given the rate of change of what's happening in the environment around any enterprise, isn't it?
See, you just addressed that, that we always think from an organizational perspective, right, that what our team members should look for. But we also need to see from the perspective of an individual, that how much time they're spending on projects on a daily basis, the amount of the new implementations they are doing. Those are learnings. Right? And we cannot nullify those learnings. It is definitely getting added value. Earlier, those things were not taken into consideration. In the last 3 to 4 years, in fact, I would say 2 to 3 years, organizations have also started taking these kind of learnings seriously because they are seeing value coming out of for the organization as an overall. So I agree with you.
Certainly. I think this has been, very interesting exploring the various aspects of how learning happens in an enterprise or organization. And, coming to topic of interest for me. In fact, we find that the vast majority of assessments of standards based on which learning is designed largely comes from pedagogy or, children's education. And there's very little that's, done in terms of andragogy. And what I mean is adult education and focused studies in that space. While I think all of us are exposed to what implicitly makes sense for an adult to learn, because they learn very differently from the way children learn. And we've been talking about that for the last 20 minutes or so. What have you seen in your experience in terms of research or anything that's happening formally in the space of researching adult learning?
I'll be very honest that I don't have have too much of expertise and idea here, but definitely I can put across what I am seeing and what I have seen. When you address this specifically from the point of view of Indian context, there is a very clear demarcation of where you have to stop learning, and this is not by option. This is how the structure is being brought in. So once you have done your graduation and you are passed out, you are getting your first job. You stop learning and you just start earning. That's one kind of rule has been brought in.
That's a nice way to put it. Stop learning and start earning.
Yeah, so that has been brought in, because see, what happens that in Indian education system, whether we like it or not, everyone is not get funded. People are taking loans, education loans. By the time they're coming out, they have to repay it. They are not left with any option to further continue their education. Second, if you see the higher studies, right? Of course, when people going for master's degree, a lot of students go outside India for master's degree, and these master's degrees migration are happening either after, immediately after graduation or after doing, 3-4 years of work experience. And of course, the agenda and the plan and all those things are separate behind each of these things. But when you talk about, and I'm glad that, the current government is bringing a lot of structural changes, lot of things are going to change in the next 5 even coming years as well. But when you take this context outside India, it's very different. In India, there is a concept of placement. So, when you are at your graduation, you get placed into company, and you hear about that, I got placed into this company, that company. But outside India, you have to actually look out for your job. So what happens is that, your learning is not stopping. There is no there's no formula that, okay, now you're done. You stop learning and you start earning. So you have to keep on fighting, learning things, keep on doing more stuff, to kind of keep yourself ahead in the competition to secure a job. And once you have secured a job, now you have to be very competitive. You have to be on the toes all the time. So to keep your knowledge and skill levels high. But I think those changes are even flowing now here as well. And on a wider scale, people are looking forward to take not stop learning or education. In fact, right now, if you see in India, there are many 1-year and short-term programs compared to any part of the world. So of course, changes are happening.
That's good to know, Rohan, and it's very nice of you to have shared that perspective, because like you said, and this is an area that we are struggling with, there's not much in terms of formal research in this area, but it's always good to understand people's perspectives of what more can be done, what exists out here, what are the options there. And I think there's a lot of takeaway for everyone from here is that, it doesn't always have to be that you have to seek opportunities to further your learning and education elsewhere. But there are, like you said, if even the short-term courses are leveraged, or if there's a way to bring those into the workplace, so it can be learning and earning instead of, stop learning,
yes,
start earning kind of a thing.
Correct.
So Rohan, you've had a very, very interesting and diverse career. What are some, probably there'd be people who are wanting to pursue a career in EdTech, because there's a lot of hype about it. There is a lot of companies that are out there that are looking at EdTech. And slowly, I think there are also an equal number of companies that are coming into the space of EdTech for learning at the workplace. And why I say this is most of the companies that are popularly known address the needs of children and students probably pursuing an undergraduate or a postgraduate course. But very few actually that have gained a similar popularity in the space of learning in the workplace. So if somebody wanted to pursue a career in EdTech, what would be some advice or suggestions that you would have to give people?
That's a very I wish I could have been the listing side 5 years back, right? Or 6 years back. In fact, I would, if I add together, it will be more than 12 years of experience in EdTech. And what I would say is that if you have plans, if your ambition is to build something in EdTech, please go for it. There is enough room for everyone. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that, of course, if you see the Indian context, again, I'm talking about Indian context and global context, Chitra, please excuse me that, but I have seen differences. I have seen huge differences differences of, compared to the both markets. So that's why I keep on saying this. I highlight those things as well.
Sure,
The first thing is
absolutely.
that if you are planning for an EdTech and you have a definite understanding whether you're planning to go for a K-12, whether you're going to go for a professional level programs or whatever it is, be very clear and be very specific of two things. Of course, the competition list, it can be big enough. It doesn't matter. You should never be scared of any kind of a competition. Second thing is that you have to always understand the paying capacity of those categories. Very sad to know one of a very known brand got shut down yesterday. I don't want to mention out the name. I have known them very well, very well funded. They have been doing fantastic. Their initiative was very great. Unfortunately, they were targeting those those segments where the paying capacity was not enough. And multiple things need to be taken care of, right? Just not the paying capacity. Second comes in is that, whether you are a B2C, whether you are a B2B plan, if you have a B2C plan, remember, no matter how good your idea is, your product is, if you are not having a fan follower or subscribers of a good amount of subscribers, you will have to spend a lot in advertising, because unless until you spend money, people will not be coming to you. So that always the outreach or go-to-market strategy has to be in line with your funds. That's the second place where maximum edtechs kind of go busted, because they don't have, even though they have tested the product, they found their MVP, they have testimonials and stuff, still they lack to get funds to, outreach or to kind of expand the businesses, right? So think of that. Third is, if you are planning to go for an enterprise side, and if your program or product is built to those stuff, again, please do a proper research and find out if majority of them are having something which is in-house built, or they already have something, because the effort and the cost of them replacing any current system program is way higher than bringing a new one. Cost-wise and also time-wise, it takes a lot of time. And third is a lot of higher, levels you have to go up and down. So these are the few things which you have to take care of, and of course it should solve a problem, right? If it is not solving a problem which is worthwhile solving, of course, you will have very less buyers or takers. And if again you're planning for India, be prepared that one of the most efficient way of getting customers initially is your freemium model, right? Or a free model where people come in, they try your product, and if they like, they pay for it, as we all know about it. That's something, and this is especially I'm talking about for SaaS, for services and stuff. Also, people have their different expectations, but keep these things in mind. And if you are having a good product which solves the problem, has a good interface and good go-to-market strategy and good people and good team, no one can stop you from getting up there.
Thanks, Rohan. I think that was really succinctly put, and I'm sure people who will be listening to this definitely have something to take away. So wanted to say a big thank you for sharing all your experiences, words of wisdom, and various perspectives and dimensions. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, Chitra. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so I would love to look forward to having more conversations with you, perhaps on different topics, and who knows, we may have more experiences to share. But until then, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast, and I certainly look forward to our next conversations.
Thank you, Chitra. Likewise. Have a great day.
Please subscribe to the Edge podcast on your favorite podcast channel. We are on Google, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. If you have stories to share and want to be featured on our podcast, write to us at podcasts@adepticlabs.com.